So let's go back to what you're going to teach us today, as far as like the 3 Ps in your end of the day routine. And like go for it. Tell us what we need to know.
Yeah. So what I was finding is that at the end of my day, I was just kind of like, I'm done. And then I would start up the next day and it was like crazy bananas. I had no idea what I was working on. And then by the time I knew it, it was time to pick up the kids. And I'm like, wait a second, like I got nothing done. What am I supposed to do? So I really started thinking about like my end of day. I was like, I need to have something in place where I can kind of like wrap up, plan, so I can shut everything off. Right. And then come the next day and it's there for me. So it wasn't named this obviously when I started it, but it's the 3 Ps of productivity. So they are process, plan, and prepare. So essentially the planning, I feel like a lot of people do that. They'll kind of map out their next day a little bit. But I think the biggest piece of that is processing the day, because I think that's where a lot of things slip through the cracks, because you've talked to a lot of people, you've written down a lot of notes, you've read a lot of emails, like we're taking all this stuff in all day. If we don't make sure that action items and follow-ups and things that we've done go where they need to go, then we're going to start forgetting stuff. So really at the end of my day, I will go and make sure my email is cleaned out and ready to go. Like anything that I can take care of, I'll clean it out, delete or archive, and really just make sure that that's kind of in place, ready to go. And I'll flag stuff if like there's still action that needs to be done or something like that. But anything I can get out of my inbox, I get out of there. The second thing I do, and this is huge, we were talking about digital clutter, is I clear off all the screenshots and the PDFs and the images from my desktop because they add up very quickly. You download stuff and then it's like your desktop's completely covered. So I'll go in and like delete or file or do whatever needs to happen, but my desktop is clear at the end of my day because it's going to start back up the next day.
This is really important too when you're working on a team, if you're like a virtual assistant, but like anything that is on your desktop that needs to be in the right team folders. Like I've heard the rule, like nothing stays on your desktop at night.
100%.
It needs to go so the right people can have access to it, whether that's like Dropbox or Google folder. And sometimes you don't realize, like I was working on that thing and now no one else can get to it. So,
I do the same thing. So I work in a co-working space and I work from home sometimes. And if I work on my desktop and leave it there and then I'm here, I'm like, cool, now I just lost productivity and can't do that because I left it on the other computer.
Yes.
So if I'm on my desktop, I'm like, that all has to go into the Google folder, wherever it needs to go. But then just from a digital clutter, like standpoint, getting it off of your desktop so that it's
I'm going to be really authentic with you right now. I am a screenshot fool. Like I get so much like Facebook ad copy, just ideas. Like I can be that creative type and I don't feel good until like I clear it off. And the problem is it does take time and then you get behind, but I would love for you to see my desktop right now because you would die. You would die. And it's
if I had $1 for every time someone said that, like I'd be a bajillionaire. They're like, don't judge me. Don't look at my desktop. It's fine.
It's so distracting. But let me tell you the other reason why I need it off. My computer, my laptop, it's a Mac, but it's from 2015 and I need the data space on it. I'm working with creatives. So I have their reels, I have their high res images, I have headshots. And one trick I like to do is just keep it in Canva because now Canva lets you download out of it. So I have to get that stuff on there. And I want proof that I did the designs for portfolios. So like, being careful with like what I keep and what I go, but like, girl, it's so bad. My laptop is not happy with me and it's a Mac. There's no excuses.
Sure. Right.
I've got to like purge those large files, like the files that are huge. So that is so important.
Yeah. So that's actually, cleaning out screenshots from my desktop and my phone is part of that process. But so here's the thing, when you implement a new system moving forward, it's easy, but then you have like this backlog that you have to keep up with, right? So like, you're like, well, it's okay, I'll start doing it moving forward, but like I have all this stuff that needs to happen first. So you do have to kind of take that one by one, but when you start doing it daily, there's less stuff there. So it's easier to be like, boop, 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 file away, done. So definitely the screenshots and the stuff on your digital desktop makes it a hot mess. And then the other piece is I'll go and make sure I'm closing out all of my browser tabs that I don't need. So like I have my core softwares and systems that I use, but like The other stuff, I'm like, okay, cool. Was there any action left with this? No, close it out. Is there action left with this? Do I need to add it to my task list? Right? Like some of the stuff we keep open just to remind us, but maybe we need a task in like Asana or Trello instead.
So it doesn't get lost. Yeah.
Yeah. So really kind of closing out browser tabs. And then if and when you have tasks that are still due today that you're not going to get to, reshuffling their date within Asana or Trello or whatever you use. So really just kind of seeing what you can clear out of that and move to different days, which is obviously part of planning too. But so it's really like taking all your notes, all the files, all the things that have happened for the day, and either putting them into Asana if it's a task, putting into Google if it's a appointment. The notes is the biggest thing. I see people taking notes and then they do nothing with them, but they've got like stars and action items, and then they forget because they're in a notebook instead of in Trello or Asana. Everybody has the same thing. I have a digital notebook, so I've got the iPad with the Apple Pencil, but I run into the same thing. If I don't keep those tabs open and start putting action items where they need to go, I will 100% forget about things.
What do you use for your action list? Do you have like a daily one, or are you using Asana?
Yeah, so I use Asana. If it's not in Asana or Google Calendar, it doesn't happen.
I mean, I figured you were, but I just had to ask. I felt like I got this Asana vibe from you. So
Yep. Because I said it like 15 times.
Yeah. What's the third P? We haven't got to that. Right?
So that's processing. That's the biggest one. And I think that's why people struggle with the next two. So the planning piece of this is to look at your calendar and look at your task list the next day and map out all of your calls and what tasks you're going to do between those calls. I still write this, even though I use Asana, like all the stuff is there. I have like just a really simple list where I'll map out all of my appointments and then put the tasks that I'm going to work on between those appointments. So really just having the plan the night before so that when you start your workday, you can just hit the ground running.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so good.
Yeah. And then the third P is prepare, which sounds a lot like planning, but I basically see this as preparing any files or outlines or things that you need to execute the plan. So if you're recording a podcast, make sure you have the outline ready. If you have a sales call, make sure you've kind of like prepped some bullet points for that. If you have a client meeting, making sure you have bullet points for what you're going to talk about there. So like, I'll just basically open up my notebooks and make some bullet points for each of those and make sure everything's ready to go. But then I'm not like hopping on a thing and like trying to search for, I'm like, oh God, where did I put the outline for this? Or, oh, I didn't research and now I'm going to go on a sales call. So really just making sure you've kind of looked at your appointments for the day and your tasks and make sure you have the items that you need for that.
I like this, and it seems so simple, but this affects your business. Like if you show up frantic, you haven't done your research with your clients.
And that's what I was doing. Like I would have 9:00 calls, which I fixed that problem. I don't take calls until 10, but I would have 9:00 calls and like the kids were running late and like, it was this like thing in the morning. And then I'm like, oh God, I have to get on this 9:00 call. And I was supposed to have like an outline ready and all of this stuff. And it happened a few times. And I'm like, oh gosh, I have to fix this. Like I have to at least prep for my 9:00 call the night before so that I'm ready to go. But you feel frazzled and then you can't do your best work. Like there's just so many things that happen when you do that.
Yeah. So I have to admit, like sometimes there's like burning fire, but I know I have some time. Like today I've had back-to-back calls and I have a new client kickoff call. And I honestly just, have not done my research for that, but I know I have a window right before.
Yeah.
So at least I've like given myself some time, but sometimes it is the burning fire. And I know from, business owners complaining and like talking to other VAs, like sometimes like we're overcommitting. So I think
for sure,
taking that time to plan your planning stage, it'll show you like, man, because I start off with great intentions. Like I think I'm going to
we're all going to do 100 tasks every day on top of our 17 calls. Yeah.
Right. And we don't need to overpromise, but we need to get a handle on like what is reasonable. And like we're creating business, like the business of our dreams, like not so we can be like just drowning in to-do list. So I think like getting a handle of that will show you what you really can get done. And then I think you'll get ahead of the fire. Like it'll pay off in the long term when you start like having that awareness of what actually is getting done.
Yeah. I mean, I was actually able to scale to 6 figures when I started like doing this very consistently and making sure that and you have to make sure that the stuff you're doing, you're just not doing stuff, right? Like busy does not equal productive.
Right.
Like you have to do things that are actually moving the needle forward. And that's what I see too many entrepreneurs doing, is that they have to like keep up with this stuff here, like all of this, and they don't put it in their calendar. So then they don't have time blocked off for it. So then the calendar completely fills up, and then this stuff has to add on top of it. And that's where the burnout comes in, because you're working 60 hours a week.
And I mean, that's kind of the nature of our business here.
100%.
People from my course doing digital marketing, because these business owners can't even keep up with that. Like the constant, the hamster wheel, constant content creation and social media and inboxes. Like that's why they're coming to us to hire. So like, these are tips like you can turn around and help your clients with, which I love.
100%. Yeah. I would highly suggest putting this in your calendar for at least 30 minutes at the end of your day, because if it's not on your calendar and you get to the end of the day, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I can tell 100% when I don't do my 3 Ps, I'm like, oh gosh, I should have done that before. Because I also, since I take notes on my iPad, I have to make sure my Apple Pencil and my iPad are charged. Like that's part of kind of like prepping and making sure things are ready. I have skipped that step before. And then I'm like, and now I have to take notes on a real notebook. Like
I was going to ask how long it takes, and 30 minutes is really doable, you guys. Like,
yeah. I mean, I think at first, obviously it's a habit and you kind of have to like get in your groove and like have your checklist of what you're doing. So it could take up to an hour, and it also depends on like if you took 15 calls in the day and did like 37 different tasks, right? How much stuff you kind of have to process. But I would say anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes is pretty reasonable. I can do it about 15, but I've also been doing it for a year and a half. So
I think it probably will depend on what kind of projects I worked on that day as well. Okay, here's a big perk that I see a lot of, especially my new students struggling with, is those boundaries. And so,
oh gosh, yes.
what does this like end of routine do for you? And like, obviously, I'm like, guiding you on this one, but like this prevents burnout when you have like a final
100%.
Like end of your day.
Yeah, because really it's not even you just feel more prepared, you feel more organized, you feel like you have a plan for the day, but like I can shut it off knowing that I still have things to do. Like I still have a million things that I have to do and want to do, but I know that they're in their place with their dates and their thing, right? So I know that I took notes from a call and those action items are where they need to be for when I start back up tomorrow. So just even the like stress and anxiety and like feeling constantly like, oh gosh, I forgot to do, or jumping up at 2 a.m, like I didn't send that thing to a client, like that goes away because you've kind of did a wrap up and kind of put it into a nice little bow.
Yeah. And sometimes we struggle with our clients too, because we're feeling like we're always on. And I feel like that end of the day would tell you, be like, all right, off of Voxer, off
Yep.
like we're done. And this becomes like an established boundary. And
boundaries are huge. Yeah. Because if you're checking your email at 8 p.m., 9 p.m. and sending things to clients at that time, you're basically training them to do the same thing because they get the answers. They're like, oh, when I email you at 8 p.m., I get an answer very quickly. So they're just going to keep doing that. I will still sometimes respond if I want, but I scheduled it so it goes out the next day.
Okay. Oh, smart.
Yeah. I'm like, all right, I'm going to spend 15 minutes and just catch up, but they're all getting scheduled for 8 a.m. tomorrow because nobody needs to know I'm emailing at 9 p.m.
I'll tell you where some of my other tasks slip through the cracks. And that's when clients can contact me on channels that I'm a little bit more mobile on. So Voxer is a huge one for me that I had to learn to turn off and not even listen. And I used to be on a 7-figure clients team, and I would look down and there'd be like 90 messages.
Oh my gosh.
And it was, oh my God, so much anxiety. And so I would be listening to them in the car. I'd be listening to them when
and then you forget and you've already listened. Oh yeah, that's
and so being strategic about when I even listen to it, like in what environment, making sure I'm on the clock when I do it, all of that is key and I know a lot of you are struggling with clients like this too. So
100%. Yeah. My team knows that if they put it in Voxer, it's just clarifying that the task has to be in Asana first, or if we come up with a task in the conversation that they have to put it in there, because I was like, if you put that in Voxer and don't put it in Asana, like it's not happening.
Yeah, we're all just going to forget about it.
Oh, for sure.
The other thing we have a hard time doing is just like I don't know. I know like Deb on my team does this and I do this too, but when you have this to-do list and it's always hanging out and like you're always kind of thinking about it, it's hard. I mean, that's like the downside to our lives, especially if we're juggling multiple clients, multiple projects. And like you have to be okay with leaving things undone.
But I think that once you've kind of like, you've recapped your day and put things where they need to go, you know, they're there waiting for you. Like, you know that they're there and you can go start checking them off the next day, but you really can turn it off. I keep track of my home stuff in Asana. Like, I brain dump that stuff in there because we have to make so many decisions in any given day on just like in our personal lives and in business. Like, I can't store all of that stuff up there or I would go crazy.
Yes, I was just telling my husband this weekend, I'm like, we need some SOPs for our life.
Right.
I just like little things, like, I don't know, we're military, we move a lot. Like every time we move, I'm like, where do I put this one?
Same checklist, right? Like,
yeah. I'm like, why did I not have an SOP when I was 22 for moving? Like,